Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes. Not quite 7:30 yet before we get started on block 2 of instruction with the unexplained investigators. Feel welcome to join us on the chat room. After last Tuesday, we had some technical difficulties. Everything seems to be better this go around. Short of my health, we did have a rough week with chemo last week, so I do apologize for cough and maybe some shoddy memory or communication. I have to keep my glasses on the night as well, based on because of the chemo. It does bother you. It does affect your eyesight. All right, so we're out here at the top of 7:30. So we'll go ahead and kick off. Really, block 2 is from our training perspective as a team. When we bring new investigators in, like I said in the beginning, we focus on 5 blocks. The first block is really introductory, kind of give them an idea of who we are, what we do. Maybe let them allow them an opportunity to look at themselves and decide where they stand, so they see how they match with us or maybe another team in the future. And the block 2 is where we kind of brief over investigative tools and investigative thought process. And it's really designed just to give you a concept. It's not by any means designed to make you a trained investigator. It's just to give you the concept. So when we go into an investigation, you have a foundation to build from. So let's get started. And, when we look at investigations, as I mentioned in the introductory, we talk about the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And we try to answer those questions. These questions are often used in journalism by reporters, journalists, police investigators, and others. I mean, it's even used in the scientific community. So it's out there in many different ways. And each of those who, what, when, where, why, and how have a little different nuance depending on who's using them. So in our case, we're not going to use them as like a law enforcement officer would use them, but we're still going to use the concept. So let's start with who. When we get to an investigation, we want to look at the who, and the who could be multiple things. But who are involved, who are most affected, who are not affected at all, who has a positive effect, who has a negative effect, who has no effect, who are the major players, who are contributing players, who could be removed, who needs to be added, and who changes things. So that's just a variable of the who's. So, like who is involved on a paranormal investigation, or who's involved in that activity. So we'd want to know who's reporting it, how many people have experienced it in each location, and how those people are related to each other, whether they're friends, relatives, however that may be. And then you would look at who's affected, not affected, things like that. Who's had a positive effect, and so that would be negative effect, things like that. So first we start with who's involved. So maybe mom, dad, brother, sister, maybe uncle, aunt, maybe only neighbors or visitors that are affected by it. So we'd want to get that nailed down first, and then we would say by each person, then we'd follow the next steps. How are they affected, positive, negative, and in that structure. So that's going to give us all the who. And so now, you may have one person, or you may have 10. I mean, it depends on how large the family is. Now, a secondary perspective to look at this, and oftentimes we look at an investigation, but we do ask the question, who might this be communicating with you? So we will ask them to provide a who that maybe they think is communicating with them from the other side. So when they add that who, you may then start a whole other realm. So you may have the living folks that we're dealing with, and then the entities or the spirits that we may be dealing with in the future. And you would obviously keep those separate on your data sheet, and have each individual listed to which one may have communicated, cross communication, things like that. So really, the investigative point begins. Sometimes that can give us a focus, a direction to go. Sometimes not. It really just depends on each individual investigation. Now we want to look at the what. The what. Define the situation or the problem. What is it about? What are we trying to find out, or what are you trying to find out? What is the reason for the investigation, or what is the reason for investigating it? What happens? What changes occurred? What happens next? And what is this? The events that follow. Excuse me. So with the what, it really opens up. So to begin with, what is it about? What are they reporting to us? Is it that somebody's being touched? Is it that somebody's being just hearing voices? There's knocks. Maybe there's bangs on the wall. Maybe it's disturbances outside. So we really want to get the true feeling for the what piece of it. Now, just as with the who, as you're going into the what, it can open. And some additional that you may want to look at is, what are verified or established events. So in other words, we say this happened. Maybe Tommy says this took place, and there's no witnesses. We want to find out if there is an actual witness to that. So maybe Susie saw it, and verify the what. And so as we go through, some of the environmental factors that I look at is humidity, rain, hot, cold, other agents, other things that maybe occurred during the investigation. But I'm also going to ask that, what happened? I was pushed down. Okay, prior to you being pushed down, what took place? Was it we were warm? Was it cold in the house? Kind of explain what was happening. And then another factor is what are the different actors? So you kind of go back to the who a little bit, but you try to piece together with the who, then tie the who and the what together, so you know who all's involved. So an example being, you may have 3 family members who are experiencing the same thing, and they all claim that it's the deceased Uncle Bob, Uncle Tom, and then they all tie together and relate that way. So that's where they begin to kind of marry. Now, for those of you that are familiar with my team, I do have this posted out there for you that on the website, a link that you can go to and get this information. And then we'll jump to when. This can point to both a timeline after changing conditions by adding or removing certain stimuli, or just when they tell you. I mean, it's it happens every Thursday night at 2 a.m. It happens every Friday at 1 p.m. or it happens every Monday at 8 a.m. Whatever, the when is when they tell you it takes place. So you structure with the who, the what, now you're to the when. And they may tell you I can't tell you when it happens. There's no certain time. It just kind of varies. So we would have to you would then look at the when from the perspective of I've got to get them documenting things so we can begin to see the timeline. Then you got the where. Where is it happening? So we know it's happening at this one location. Is it happening just the general property? Does it happen more in one room as opposed to the others? Does it happen more in the front of the property, the back of the property? This one's a little quicker to narrow down. So it's kind of like the when. sometimes you have to drill deeper, or you have to give them a data sheet and let them collect dates and times for you to nail it down. The where they're going to be able to typically say it happens at this one spot, or it just happens throughout the house. But more often than not, it's going to be a room. And then how? In what manner or way? Um, Again, they may not be able to tell you, they may not be able to give you any idea, but as an investigator, that is part of your responsibility, is to try to walk them down this direction. Oftentimes it's here at the how that we can debunk activity and move to something else. So you definitely want to spend some quality time on it. How, in what manner, for what reason, with what meaning, to what effect, to what degree or extent, in what state or condition. Um, how can we mimic can we mimic the situation? Is there contributing factors? So that would be the how can really be a debunking spot for the entire investigation. So that's why this is really applied in the beginning interview, because it saves us from wasting time. It really does. If we do if we do an interview and we decide that the people we've debunked it and it's something non-paranormal or supernatural, this would be a great time for us, but they don't seem like they can move past it. This would be a great time for us to do an investigation, just to be able to debunk it live time, so they can get the feel for it. They see how that works. And then the last part is brainstorming, and that's pulling all these components together, coming back to one place, and just brainstorming it, put it all together, and do it not as one individual, but do it as a team. So everybody shares the information, everybody talks about it, and gets their input put in, and we talk about each feature individually. Uh, and even the best of the best teams, this oftentimes doesn't happen. In my team, this more than often doesn't get to happen. I wish it did, but it doesn't, because not everyone wants to get together. Not everybody has free time. Not everybody wants to make the time to do things. That's why when you get into this, you've got to be prepared to be into it. And you just can't forget that piece. Okay, now that we kind of went over the basics, we want to kind of look at what are some other, once you determine the investigation location, you need to do the research, needs to be completed. So, location is identified, interview the current property owner, and use our fact gathering sheet. Using the information gathered during the interview, begin your research. Verify all previous property owners, if at all possible. I mean, you have to sometimes, it's like pulling teeth, or you have to dig. You really need to try to verify that. Research land records, potential grave sites, previous homes or businesses, because oftentimes a business have been there, they've mowed it down, put up houses, or it was a residential, they mowed it down and put up a business, or it's a cemetery and they removed bodies and made it a residential area. So these things are critical. Battlefields, roads, things like that. The roads are instrumental. People don't think about in today's day and time, but years previous, there's locations of roads that no longer exist. They're now residential. That things could have taken place in that strip of highway, a fatality, robbery, variable things, and could be causing that activity at that location. Visit local museums, local historical sites, historians, libraries, newspapers, internet. There's just a myriad of information out there. Contact previous owners or family members to verify history. So if somebody says, I know 3 owners back, their grandmother passed away in the house, that's not a very soft topic, I guess. It's pretty hard. So you may not want to call and say, hey, I heard your grandmother passed away in the house, but, maybe call and say, hey, the current owners are having us look into the history of the property for whatever reason you want to give. Oftentimes I tell them for historical purposes and for going in. And I oftentimes ask them if they have original pictures so I can look and see if there's walls and things that can move for remodeling purpose, things like that. And that's oftentimes what I'll explain to them. And then I'll say, can you tell me a day in the life of the house, and then have them kind of go through. Did you have any special visitors? Good, especially good times, things like that. And oftentimes those sad occurrences will come out through just general conversation. Organize and verify your research. Do your brainstorming session. Again, bring everybody in with everything you've collected. Not one person should be going into an investigation with solo information, or going in carrying what I call the nuclear briefcase, where they've got all the answers. They've done they know everything, and then they try to use it against the other team members to maybe make the homeowner or the property owner think that they're more knowledgeable, which they are technically, but that they're more ahead of the game than the rest of the team. That just undermines the entire process. Double check and verify all leads, and as a team, review known history to develop a plan. So you really want to take all this information you've gathered, and this is really the best point for the beginning brainstorming session. This is probably one of the biggest things I miss about having teams that are a team that I consider functional in all capacities. Currently, I don't know of too many out there that are completely functional, but this is one of the places I miss it, because this is where we take the initial interview information and now the research, and we can combine them and have a strong brainstorming session and come up with verifiable questions that we want answers to. Because if we want to really look at this from a scientific perspective, we got to be asking questions. So what's our question? And this is going to help us formulate a question or multiple. And then once we get into the environment, if we're able to answer that question, then obviously we're going to restructure, retest, and see if it represents itself. So, I know I'm moving kind of quickly here, but like I said, on this link, you have a direct. I do have a link to our website, which will take you to this section. So you can read it yourself and kind of get a baseline. And I do apologize for any punctuation or misspellings or anything like that. I haven't looked at this. This is the original rough draft. I haven't really looked at it in years. I have training manuals that are hard copy that we finalized and things that are better. But unfortunately, this is just the rough draft. So I apologize for any errors that you may find in there. But you can go to our link, go back and go through this. So the next one is a fact gathering sheet. This one is, I consider, for more professional style interviewers. It's not for the new investigator, whether it be you're in law enforcement, private sector, or doing what we do. This would not be something that typically a newcomer would use, but it is because it's based off of opinion and comments. So the interviewer uses body language along with other information, keywords that this person gives off, and then test questions that most professional interviewers are going to have. That's the nicest way I can put it. There's other terminology for it, but layman's term, I'll just put test questions out there. There's words and things that we'll put out just to solicit a response or to get a physical response, so we can see, kind of gauge the person's norm and unnorm. So you can kind of go through this one. Again, like I said, this is not a form that a beginner would necessarily want to use, because again, it is based off of opinion. So that was a quick spin, less than 15 minutes, or about 15-minute spin of the entire block. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have a whole lot of people in the chat room, so there's not a lot of questions I can go back and answer or kind of trying to address. So I'm going to cut this one short. Only a 15-minute block here, but like I said, I do have the link to the website, which has this there. Feel free to review it. Email me with any questions, or contact me direct and I'll try to help you out. I'll try to help out, answer anything that I can with it. But this is really the probably one of the most important parts of paranormal investigations. Period, hands down. If you take just this and get the concept, you don't have to be a master. It's just the concept. You're going to be able to do great things and help a lot of folks. But well, until next Tuesday, hopefully I'll hear from people through the week like I did this past week. But until next Tuesday, be safe. Good luck out there, and I'll see you next week.